when the front door of a home could be left open or a stranger invited in for a cup of tea. Unfortunately, Australia is not immune to violent and senseless crime, including that which is perpetrated in the home of the innocent victim. But there are ways that a criminal's entry into a household can be impeded and hopefully prevented. And with me this morning with some good advice on home security is security expert Pat Daly. Morning, Pat.
Hello, Joan. Nice to be on the program again. It's an indictment on our society that one has to come on and talk about these issues. However, but it is a pleasure to be here talking to you.
It certainly is. I mean, it's almost like we're becoming prisoners in our own home, isn't it, these days?
Yes, exactly, because there's been a very marked increase in violent crime throughout all cities in Australia, and indeed in country areas. They're not exempt now because drugs are responsible for a very large percentage of crime. We estimate that over 70% of all break and enters are drug related, and people are desperate for drug money. Someone who's on a heroin habit, they don't need hundreds of dollars a week, they need thousands of dollars a week to sustain that habit.
So it's obviously very, very important to secure your home, but what are the best ways of doing it?
Well, what we have to do is to try and deter the criminal, and there's many options that you can use to try and stop somebody from getting into your house, because the bottom line is to create a situation where they're going to be deterred, they're going to go away and look for an easier target. So something like a key-operated window lock provides a very real deterrent against criminal activity, and this simply locks the window in position. You can turn the key and it prevents somebody from simply breaking the glass and reaching in and opening the window. And also, but this is the most important feature, Joan, is that you can lock the window in a ventilated or partially open position. Perhaps not so applicable now we're in the middle of winter, but coming into the summer months, you can lock the window in that open position and still have full security. Even when you go to bed at night, you can have the window partially open. That's a very important security feature of key-operated window locks.
And that's not only for the newer aluminium-type window frames, is it? You can have that put on older.
Yes,
well.
all types of windows, whether they be wooden, aluminium, as you said, there's a key-operated window lock to fit every conceivable type of window in the home.
What are the other things that you should do?
Well, you can go to an alarm system, simply use a passive infrared detector which is connected to a control box, and this means that this device is placed strategically in the house, and 3 or 4 of them, you know, in the main living area, hallway, etc. So if somebody gets into the house, they're going to be detected, and that provides very real security, particularly if somebody breaks in. They can't then hide inside, and if you come home, well, you're confronted with some horrific situation. But I suppose one of the most important components of an alarm system, and we realise what's been happening in recent weeks, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, there's been some terrible crimes perpetrated against women in the home. So that's where we have to consider an emergency button. Now, of course, that's loose now, but imagine that if it's placed on a wall, near your bed, down at the front door, out in the kitchen area. So if you're actually confronted by somebody in the house, you can press that, and that will activate the alarm system, and of course, that person will run in the vast majority of cases. So an emergency button is a very important feature of any security system in the home.
And that comes with most security systems?
Yes, well, of course, people have to ask for that. If somebody's coming around to give a quote for an alarm system, make sure that you have an emergency button. It's only another $50 or $60 to have an emergency button strategically placed, you know, somewhere in the home.
In fact, you really should, as you say, have them in more than one place. You should have them by the kitchen bench and particularly by the bed.
Yes,
so
that's
that,
right.
You know, they are there close to you, you know, apart from the panic that would obviously set in if someone confronted you. Hopefully you would be able to get to it.
Well, you know exactly where to go. Well, that's the big thing. And of course, I suppose one of the most advanced forms of security now, and they're very popular on the continent, they're becoming very popular here, are security shutters. Now, these are preferable to bars because you can have it fully opened and have ventilation and sunlight during the day when you're at home. But when you go out, you can have the shutter closed, and that provides very real security against criminal activity. Because again, it's, I suppose, the ultimate deterrent. What you have to do is to make the person go away. And if you've got security, well, they're going to do that.
That looks like a terrific idea to me, that door. Fabulous. Or window. Also, I mean, I guess when or if, unfortunately, an intruder came into your house, is it better to sort of have a go at that person, or if you've got a knife handy or something, or is it better to sort of remain as calm as you possibly can and be as passive as possible? Are these people turned on by violence?
Well, they are, Joan, unfortunately, and I get myself into a little bit of trouble when I say this, because there's people out there now, viewers that are watching this, that might get the wrong idea when I say that you should try and talk your way out of trouble instead of trying to fight your way out of trouble. Now, I'm not suggesting or advocating that women simply submit, and I'm not being silly, but it's better to try and negotiate your way out of trouble, because these animals, and I make no apology for saying that, half the time are turned on by violence. So if you can try and perhaps get out away from trouble, don't avoid violent confrontation at all costs. But of course, if it gets to the bottom line and you have to defend yourself, well, of course, anything goes. Go for it. But initially, try and negotiate your way out of trouble.
Well, good advice, Pat. It's certainly necessary these days with, as you say, some horrific crimes being perpetrated in the last couple of weeks, particularly the lady in Wallara in Sydney.
Well,
I mean, it's just... You
it's
can't
awful.
believe
I mean,
that these sort of things can happen. She may have well left her door open, and that's, I guess, another thing that we must realise too. If you come home with the shopping, get it to the front door, have your key ready, take it inside and shut the door immediately.
Shut the door immediately. I mean, here in Mossman, of course, which is a suburb of Sydney down on the north side, 2 old ladies killed in recent months.
Right.
There's been attacks, and it's happening in Melbourne, Brisbane, and whatever. So, unfortunately, as we move into the 1990s, drugs and, let me say, juvenile crime are going to cause a great deal of concern in the community, and it's up to everybody to simply be security-minded.
Well, thank you for coming in and helping us with that.
Thank you.
Talking with Pat Daly this morning, and we'll be back after this. But first, it's over to Georgia Tilley with more good news from David Jones.
Thanks, Joan. With me is Helen Flaherty from Vogue Butterick Patterns, and we're going to take a look at home sewing with a vengeance, aren't we? How are you and
Certainly.
welcome.
Very well,
Now,
thank
there is
you.
a resurgence to home sewing, and rightly so, because we've got to dispel the myths that home sewing is difficult and also that patterns can be expensive. These are not.
No, they're not expensive. As a matter of fact, most people always think that Vogue patterns are expensive, but when you actually do look at some of the other patterns that are available, they really aren't any more than a few dollars extra.